Okay, good evening. Welcome to Love Life. It is great to have you with me this evening for this show, this live talk show, Love Life, which promises to be fairly interesting and exciting. We did an ad this morning, and we know that some of you are very interested in talking about this topic this evening. And we're just going to give you a few minutes to log on before we start. But just to let you know that this show is brought to you with the compliments of Better Blends Relationship Institute. And we are a counseling, training, coaching entity. You know, we are very concerned with all the issues that surround relationships, love, sex, making your life more wholesome, more meaningful. And yeah, this topic is a hot topic this evening. Our topic this evening, for those of you who may not have seen the ad, is entanglement. And that is a word that has been getting quite a bit of traction recently because of an interview. But before, we're not going to get ahead of ourselves. We're just going to give you a few minutes to log on, and then we are going to start. So stay tuned. We'll be with you in a few. Hi, Sharianne. Hi, Gabriel. Gabriel will be joining me a bit later. And for those of you who have been following our show, who've been listening to us over an extended period of time, we have been on radio for quite a while, maybe perhaps 3 years or so. And since the COVID pandemic, we have been bringing you the show from home. And we're so pleased to have you this evening in the house. And we are going to be talking about entanglement. What does that mean in the context of a relationship? What does that mean in the context of a marriage? And I know that this word became pretty popular recently because of that, I must say now, infamous interview between Jada Pinkett Smith and Will, her husband. And, you know, for most of us, we understand that something happened in their relationship. Something seemed to have gone wrong. And they decided to bring it to the table on Jada's show. Now, I'm not here tonight to bash Jada, to bash Will. So if that's what people think, that's not what I'm about to do. I thought it very interesting as someone who's interested in relationships, as someone who's been dealing with relationships quite a while. I've written about them extensively through my blog, Red Apples. For those of you who don't know, you can catch a lot of my articles on relationships, love, sex, relationships, marriage, dating on Red Apples. Red Apples as one word, .wordpress.com. There are several articles there for your reading, enjoyment, and education. And then there's my book, How to Have Mind-Blowing Sex Without Losing Your Brain, which is still available on Amazon.com. So you can go on Amazon and search for that book by name, How to Have Mind-Blowing Sex Without Losing Your Brain by Denise J. Charles. And so I've been discussing relationships for quite a while. I've been involved in relationship education, you know. So any issue that makes the public and makes for interesting discussion will be something that I will honing on, zero in on, and would want to give my 2 cents worth. But I'm not here necessarily, as I said, to really get into a full expose or discussion on Will and Jada and what they did or didn't do. But I found their conversation pretty interesting as someone who was looking on as a counselor, and I found there was an interesting dynamic going on between the two of them. I found the use of language also very, very, very interesting, and I want to tackle it from that perspective first. You know, there's a quote from Shakespeare which says, "A rose by any other name is still as sweet as a rose." Something along those lines. I might not have gotten that quotation quite right, but it is something along there that Shakespeare says. A rose by any other name, it's still a rose. And Will spoke about an interaction that happened between his wife and someone else. She spoke about it as an entanglement. So he called it an interaction. She called it an entanglement. And I was amazed that both of them, having claimed to have dealt with this and that they have been healed and it has been resolved because it happened so many years ago. I think they said about 4 years ago. So they're amazed that it's now into the public domain after much speculation. After having said that it had been dealt with, I was amazed that they were still tiptoeing around it. They were still tiptoeing around it. They were almost afraid to call it by its name. Neither of the two of them used the term cheating. Neither the two of them used the term infidelity. Neither the two of them used the word adultery. He said interaction. She said entanglement. Now, as someone who's very interested in language and very interested in communication, I also found that uncanny. Is calling it by another name, does calling it by another name make it any less lethal? Does that make it any less dangerous to the relationship? When you call it by another name, does that somehow take away some of the edge? Does it make it less toxic? Does it make it less dangerous? Was that for the benefit of the audience? So the audience wouldn't feel or wouldn't judge her as harshly because of the use of the term? Or was that for their own selves? Were they seeking to protect each other or seeking to protect the self? And it could have been a collection of all of those things. Will might have been attempting to protect his wife by not calling her a cheater outright. She might have been protecting herself as well by not even calling herself one. Actually, I was a bit miffed because of my own take on infidelity and how you need to deal with it in a relationship, and that's what we're going to be talking about really. I was a bit miffed by the fact that she said, I actually wrote it down, so I want to make sure that I get it right. Yes. He said to her, jokingly, I'm about to hear my wife's transgressions, or my wife is about to admit her transgressions. I might not get the exact quotation right, but he used the term transgression to describe what she did. And she laughed and she said, but transgression, I really don't look at it as a transgression at all. And I found that uncanny for a couple who is claiming to have healed or to have experienced healing or to be on the pathway to healing after an incident or incidences, if it's more than one, of infidelity. To have said, I don't see it as a transgression at all, made me wonder how much how much denial she was still going through with respect to the seriousness of what she had done, and how much denial was Will also going through, or perhaps was he going through that denial? Were they at two different places? I don't know if you saw it and what you thought, but I thought that they were at two different places. I thought that she seemed very in control. Her use of language was very expressive. She seemed almost detached from him. It was almost as if she was analyzing someone else that wasn't her spouse, and it felt to me as if she was just psychologizing, if I could create that word, the entire event. She was seeking to place, psychological and therapeutic nuances to it. It was all about my growth, it was about my development, it was about my need to connect with myself, to find myself, to feel good. She described something that is really horrific, something that is the breaking of a serious covenant between a man and a woman. She described it in words that seemed very much hinged on making her look good. That was my take on it. While Will, on the other hand, if we could judge by appearances, looked completely devastated, looked emotionally drawn, distraught. His eyes even looked red as if he had been crying or if he wanted to cry. He certainly didn't seem as at peace with it as she was, because he kept wanting to get her to admit to something that he was calling an interaction and that she called an entanglement, that they never quite, unpacked what it was. Now, at the end of the day, this is a married couple who, for all intents and purposes, did not have to come to the public with this, okay? I don't think that because you're a celebrity, it means you have to out all of your business in the public domain. I understand you're a celebrity. I understand that that dynamic alone will draw certain things on you and from you. People will want to know what's going on in your life. People like to connect with celebrities. They like to see themselves through the lives of celebrities, even as much as they understand that their lives are different. So I understand that, but I don't think that they necessarily had to do it, but they chose to do it. And if you're going to choose to do something, either do it properly or don't do it at all. And they did get a lot of support because I've been on sites, I've been on the same, video link. I've seen lots of supportive comments beneath them. I've seen lots of people saying, leave them alone, it's their life, and so on. And I'm fine with that. And I'm not here to bash them. I'm just using this as a vehicle for us to start a conversation because we're already talking about cheating tonight. We're talking about a good old Bajan horn, in terms of the language that we use here in Barbados. Some call it cheating, some call it infidelity. In the context of marriage, people use the term adultery. But we know that infidelity also takes place in relationships where marriage has not yet happened, right? But we're looking at the principle. It's adultery, it's cheating, it's being unfaithful, it's being dishonest, really. Some might argue, well, there was a break in the relationship. I don't know enough about their relationship because they're not people that... I don't follow celebrities. Let me say this. I don't follow celebrities. If I do find interesting stories, I will read them, or I will listen to the video feed, or I will listen to the news item, human interest from the level of human interest. I will listen to it. I will sometimes contribute on different websites and so on, because I want to put my position out there. But I don't necessarily track down celebrities to see, all the ins and outs of their lives. I know that there was always some talk about their relationship having challenges, etc. So this might have been at the end of the road, or at the seeming end of the road, in a long list of challenges that they might have been experiencing. Perhaps Will was unfaithful to her too. I don't know. People have thrown that into the ring as well. What was he doing during that break? Was he cheating on her? Was he unfaithful, etc.? Well, he might have been. I don't know. But two wrongs certainly don't make a right. But the point of their discussion that night or that day on the table certainly was what happened with Jada and what choices Jada made and her way of describing it. And that led me really to want to discuss this evening. I've discussed this before, so this is not the first time I'm discussing it, but it is one of the areas of relationships that I love to discuss because I know that many people, having counseled many couples, this is a big issue. This is a big issue in the context of relationships, no matter where you're from. Within the context of the Caribbean, within the context of Barbados, it is a huge issue. The issue of infidelity, the issue of cheating, the issue of horning. And if you want to look at it by any other name, it is what it is. A rose by any other name is still a rose, as I said at the opening. So call it entanglement, call it interaction, an attempt to make it seem more palatable, maybe even more acceptable, or to make it seem as a growth moment for you. No, I'm not saying that if you cheated and you were penitent, you felt sorry for it, even if you and your partner didn't get back together, because that is not always the end result. People don't always get back together. Relationships are not always healed as a consequence of cheating. But if that happens, usually there is some level of growth that has taken place in both of you, not just in terms of the infidel, the person who did the cheating, but both of you go through some level of growth because of the repair and the counseling and the fact that you have to reflect, you have to look at your life, you have to look at your relationship, you have to look at your choices, etc. So usually growth will take place. Growth will take place even if the two of you don't get back together. So whether you do or whether you don't, growth will take place. You will move from where you were before. But to make the incident of infidelity seem like something so good because it really brought you into this new place, I don't necessarily think I like that. Because you can get to that place, you can move on and grow in your relationship without doing something that's bad or without doing something that's wrong, right? So let's look at this whole issue tonight of cheating, right? And when I'm having these discussions, I always love to have the perspective of a man For those who don't know who I am, Anthony's J. Charles, author, talk show host, many, many things, writer, educator, artist. But I love to have my husband's opinion, Gabriel Charles, and he's going to join me right now. And he's a man, and he's obviously going to be able to bring a perspective that will be different to mine in terms of how men think, how men become so easily entrapped. And we're not only saying that men are the ones that cheat, because in the scenario that we began with in terms of Will and Jada, she, female, was the one who cheated. We don't know if Will cheated. Hi, Gabriel.
Hi, Louise. Good night to all.
Right, so we have my husband in the house, and we're just going to be having a little discussion, and it's going to be guided by a couple questions. And as we normally say, well, this isn't like the regular talk show. If we were on radio, that I could hear you, call in. But, there is a space that you can write your comments. So if there's something that you want to say, something you want to ask, please drop it in there. We're going to try our best to track it and to respond. Because something that I always say in every forum that I speak in, learning takes place in community. So, yeah, you have something to say that I can learn, and that you have something to say that hopefully you will learn as well. So this is a dialogue as much as it can be in the context of Facebook Live, right? But the overriding question I want to ask is, how should couples treat to the issue of infidelity? How should couples treat to the issue of adultery? How should they treat to the question of cheating? Same thing, different words. How should couples deal with it? And I know that's a very large overriding question. How do we handle something like this when it does happen in our relationship, if it does happen? And in unpacking the anatomy of cheating, and I've written a number of articles on this, which I will, after this show, look out on my Facebook page. I'm going to try to post, at least I'm sure I have about 3 articles that deal with the question of infidelity, and also in terms of forgiving infidelity and moving on, right? Why do we cheat? How do we define cheating? Because we know there are several types of cheating. There are several levels of cheating. I don't know that one level is more acceptable than the next, or less dangerous than the next, but there are levels, and we will perhaps unpack how we see that. Can cheating ever be described as a blessing? Can it ever be seen as a blessing in a relationship, as Jada seemed to be indicating in her her little expose, as it were? Does one good or bad horn deserve another? If your partner cheats on you, should you cheat back? Should that be your way of getting even? Does that help if you strike back at your partner when they have done something like this to you? And should we always cheat and tell? Should we always cheat and tell? If there is cheating, does that mean we have to fess up? Can we cheat and hide it for the sake of the relationship? Can we keep it quiet and just go on our merry way and, remain healed, remain whole, continue to enjoy our married life, continue to enjoy our relationship because we haven't told, and, what you don't know can't hurt you kind of thing? What do you think about these questions? These are the questions that are going to be guiding our discussion this evening. And I'm going to start off by asking Gabriel this question, and he's going to give his perspective as a man, and then I will weigh in as well. Gabriel, from your perspective as a man, you're an experienced man. You've been around the block for a while. You've been married to me for a long time. We have together counseled many couples and so on. Why do you think people cheat? Why do people cheat? I have my take. He has his take. We're going to see what this take is all about. Good night to all of you who are joining. I'm so happy to have you here.
And remember to please share the page.
Share the page. Get some others interested in this discussion this evening. Why do people cheat, Gabriel?
Wow. Why do people
That
cheat?
is a big question.
That is a big one.
Now we're talking about intimate relationships, all right? Romantic relationships, marriage. That's what we're talking about. Why do people cheat?
I was watching a movie not too long ago, and I think it was last night. We were watching a movie, and it spoke about this.
I can't even remember the name.
This
it
woman
was on BET.
Yeah, this woman that had a friend.
Friend request. It's a new BET movie, Friend Request.
Had a friend, and they went to school together.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, he went along with her. And
something happened. You didn't watch the movie, so you don't know what happened.
But what I saw was that he happened to cheat with her because he was married, and it all stemmed from knowing each other for a long time. Now I want to backtrack as a result.
Okay.
It is often said that even when you get into a relationship, you do not drop your best friend if your best friend is of the opposite sex.
Okay.
Which has resulted in many times you find persons falling into the same rut of infidelity.
Okay, so you're basically saying that sometimes people end up cheating because they don't put their older relationships that they may have had, it might be a best friend, it might even be an old flame.
Old flame.
Right? They don't put those relationships in the right context.
Right.
And sometimes they keep that connection with the person. And if an occasion comes for them to see each other, they can fall into a sexual connection, as it were.
And usually I find that a lot of men, as I'm speaking as a man, a lot of men usually fall prey to women because women, knowing that you are married, is often said that the mere fact I know he's married, I'm going to get him.
Yeah, because some women, all right, and I am a woman, so I'm not about bashing women, but I am one of these women. I am also a realist. I don't believe because you support women, and I do support women. I think we're very complex creatures, very complicated creatures, but I do support women. I'm a woman myself. I'm very sensitive to the issues of women. But that does not mean that I do not also recognize the flaws or the weaknesses in women. Because as human beings, both men and women, we have our individual weaknesses, right? And I will never put a plaster over the sore when it comes to a woman doing something that I think she shouldn't do. And I think because we as women very often are very connected to ourselves, we understand ourselves perhaps a lot better than men do because of how we are raised, how we reflect a lot. We tend to think more, but I wouldn't say we think more deeply. I wouldn't say that because that's insulting to men and suggesting that men don't think. I'm not saying that. We just think differently. And we spend time engaging with ourselves differently. So we understand ourselves very well, and we understand our sexual power very well as well. And I think women very often use that power, not so much to get a man to keep him, especially when women say you're married so he's going after you, but to sort of get the man to prove to themselves that I can get this man, right? So it's not something that the woman actually wants you for good or she wants you for keeps. She just wants you to make herself feel better, to prove to herself that I am sexy, I do have power, and I can get any man I want. That is true. Women.
And let me say here, women cheat as well, okay?
Yes.
So we just want to lay that foundation.
Right, we're not just
saying that only men cheat.
That's right.
Because even with the thing with Will and Jada, we recognize that, well, I don't know if Will was a cheater as well. It did not say.
It didn't say.
Right, but she was coming out saying, well, hey, she cheated. Although with her saying so, she wanted to show her strength.
Yes.
In the fact that it has made her a better person.
Yes. Right? And she didn't, but and remember, she never used the word cheat.
Right, she never did.
She never used such language. She said she used entanglement, and to his credit, he also didn't use a harsh word. He said interaction, and to boot, she said to her it wasn't a transgression. That is what really had me, right? Anyhow, we'll get to that later.
But what I find though is that sometimes men get into a place where they become vulnerable to
another woman,
and the things that probably sometimes that the woman in the house is not given to him.
Yes.
The woman outside the house would give to him, and it makes him even more vulnerable, and which creates the space to place him in a way to give himself.
That's right. And that vulnerability is not always sexual, because sometimes we think, oh, he ain't getting at home.
Right.
Now, I think there was some research that said that many men who cheat are actually having great sex with their wives. So it is not that, I'm not saying that men don't say, well, you ain't gave me none, so you're going to get some somewhere else. There are men that say that. There are men that use that as an excuse. But in many instances, the need that is being met for the man is not always a sexual need. Sometimes he wants to feel validated. He wants to feel like a man. And only a man can really explain what that means. But, you know, having lived around 4 men, you know, my 3 sons who are all grown men, well, now 2 because 1 is married, and my husband, I understand this whole question of that testosterone and what, you know, manliness feels like or what it looks like. And for some men, they might think, well, the woman that I'm with does not make me feel like a man. She doesn't respect my manhood. She doesn't respect me. She doesn't give me that strength.
And especially if that man would have come from a place where the way he has been socialized, he has seen men just having other women apart from their own wives. So he believes, well, hey, that's the way to live. That's the way to go about things. When really and truly it is not, because the Bible says the 2 shall be one. So you should have 1 woman and not more than 1. But then because of the way, as I said, he's socialized, he find himself wanting to create that same culture in his
now,
life.
for those who are going to say, you know, I know because I commented on a post somebody put up some time ago, you know, the whole question of the fact that everybody doesn't live by the Bible and everybody doesn't have a Christian worldview, and there are places where people have many wives and so on. You know, that came in, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that tonight. But we know that even in those cases where there's more than 1 wife, there's usually a favorite wife.
Yes.
And there's a favorite wife because that is the original blueprint. That, I don't care what anybody tells me, that is the original blueprint. But 1 man for 1 woman and 1 woman for 1 man. So even when you have 10 wives, you will find that you like 1 the most, because you're only supposed to have 1.
But it's amazing that we always look at the fact that in some Bible times you had men with many wives. But has there ever been a place where you find a woman with many husbands?
Yes. Okay. That does happen as well. That does happen in some,
but it is not,
some tribes in Africa.
Right, but it is not the prerequisite.
It's not the original blueprint.
It's not the original blueprint.
It's not the original blueprint.
And I was saying that men fall prey as a result of these different things that can happen in their lives.
So we said people cheat because there's that, sometimes there's an old connection, an old flame, a best friend that is really occupying a space that should only be occupied by your spouse.
That's right.
Because we are of the philosophy, as a couple, this is our philosophy, okay? Every couple might not have this philosophy, but this is our philosophy. If we are married and we are in a relationship, or if a couple is in an intimate relationship, even if they're not married, but they're in a close, intimate, committed relationship, that you should not have a best friend of the opposite sex. You can have friends, okay? I can have male friends that I may have known, or people that I work with, or people that, you know, my husband may have friends. But at the end of the day, any friends we have should be open to the relationship, to the couple relationship. Right. So they should become friends of our relationship. Yeah. They should become friends of our marriage. And it's not that this is my friend and this is his friend when this is somebody of the opposite sex. That is actually very dangerous.
It is.
And you can find, especially when there's a time when there is a disagreement between the partners, that you might end up turning to that best friend or to that good friend and sharing with them things intimate stuff about your relationship that you really shouldn't be sharing.
That's right.
You might be, no, I'm not saying that because you're married you should never talk the truth or speak the truth about your spouse if something is happening and you need to share it with someone. You know, you choose carefully who you share that with, but definitely don't share it with somebody of the opposite sex. And don't share it with somebody who you are emotionally vulnerable with. And that is the whole thing about cheating that we're going to look into when we begin to look at the different types of cheating. How do we define cheating? How does cheating actually look? What does it actually look like, right? So we're saying, why do we cheat? We cheat sometimes because we make connections that we shouldn't make, or we maintain connections that we shouldn't maintain with best friends or old flames. or because there's an area of vulnerability in our lives, and that goes both ways. It's not just for men only that might be vulnerable, not having their needs met, not being affirmed as men. Women as well, because in the same way how men would say, well, I need sex and you're not giving me any, so I'm going to go and look for some somewhere else, or you're not exciting enough. I've heard men use that as well. Or I don't get from her what I got from other women. Other women were sexy, they were uninhibited, they were this, they were that, but she's straight-laced, she's conservative in bed, and I need excitement. I've heard men say that. I've heard men speak about even the size of the vagina, not being satisfied with the size of the vagina, thinking, oh, this vagina is not giving me what I want it to give me. Right. And in that context, the sex act between the two of you becomes reduced to just a penis and a vagina, which, although those are the hardware that we use to do the act, certainly it's not all that there is to sex.
That's right.
And certainly sexual engagement is not just about penis size and vaginal size, but it's about a whole lot more. And that's a whole other discussion for another show. But the point I'm trying to make is that we have these issues coming between men and women. Women can also feel vulnerable.
Yeah, let's say what you
Theirs may not be. Well, some women may feel sexual vulnerability as well. They might feel their needs aren't being met either. They may be with a partner that is not meeting their needs. Some women would say, or some women might say, a woman would hardly cheat because of sex only. I can't speak for all women. I certainly wouldn't do it, but I don't know. There may be some of you out there who are saying, well, I would. I know of some younger women who have said for them, they're not going to get with a man if they think he's not going to meet their needs sexually, etc., etc. That is a different kettle of fish to having committed to someone. You love this person. You've chosen to be with this person. You're married to them. You're committed to them. And they're not meeting your need. Are you just going to go and cheat because they're not meeting your sexual need? I don't know. It would be great if I could hear from you.
Please let them know that they can comment.
Please, you can comment and share as well. But I know there are many women who say, well, women sometimes cheat, not because they plan to cheat, but because their emotional needs weren't being met. So in the same way that a man might say, well, my sexual needs weren't being met, and sex is very important to men. Well, that is important to us women as well, but sex to men is like oxygen.
Yeah.
And for many women, connection and emotional connection is like oxygen. We need that in a relationship. We need to feel loved and understood, and we need someone who's going to take their time and talk to us and make us feel needed and make us feel secure and that type of thing, or add to that sense that we want to feel secure and so on. So some women might end up cheating, not because they planned to, but because the husband wasn't meeting that need. The boyfriend might not have been meeting that need, and they get closer to someone. They engage in conversations with that person, and they become vulnerable. And the next thing they know, they're in bed with the person. And it didn't necessarily start out as a sexual attraction or as a sexual need. It started out as an emotional need. It started out as a need for conversation and so on, a need for affirmation, a need to be held, sometimes in a non-sexual way. And that led then to an entanglement, right? Yes, right? So those are some of the reasons why people cheat. I'm sure there are others, but those are some of the main reasons that we are going to look at this evening. If you think of any more and you want to put them into the chat, feel free so to do.
If you have a question to ask, please feel free to do that as well.
Right. So we've looked at why people cheat. Now, how do we define cheating? And, we kind of started that conversation just now in looking at why people cheat. Mm-hmm. We know there are different types of cheating. I'm not going to say that one is more innocent than the next or one is less dangerous than the next. I think they're all lethal. I think they can all be debilitating. But generally, I tend to speak of infidelity in two ways. I speak of emotional infidelity and I speak of sexual infidelity. And we began to touch on emotional infidelity just now, when we were looking at the fact that women often have emotional needs that they need to have met, and that men can also feel very vulnerable because they need to be affirmed, they need to feel, they need to be, they need their egos stroked, and they need to feel like, yes, I'm a man, I'm good at what I do and so on. The wife might not be giving them the compliments and And so all of that is emotional need, you know.
Yeah,
All of that
right.
is emotional
That's right.
need. I think because of the age of social media, the digital age that we're in today, I think that has lent a different dynamic, a different layer to the whole cheating scenario that would not have existed in times past. Now, obviously, people would still have used telephones,
Yeah.
secret numbers, you know, talking late at night when one spouse might have been asleep. You know, you get up from next to them and you go and you talk to this person secretly, etc. And you know, you did this in a clandestine way. And that might have then led to other things. But certainly now with the advent of you know, the social media types of chats, we have the WhatsApps and, you know, the messengers and stuff like that. It is so easy to have so many contacts that you could easily be cheating in terms of having inappropriate conversations right in front of your spouse, and they don't know, they're unaware of it, you know. And unless you are in a relationship where your phones are exposed and open to each other, and if your phones were exposed and open to each other, you probably wouldn't do it. But we've sat with couples where the whole thing about a password and a passworded phone is a big deal. Where women say, well, I can't get into your phone to check what's in your phone. And the man is saying, well, I can't get into your phone to check what is in your phone. Now, obviously, things are like that when there is something to hide. You might say, well, I am married, yes, but I need to still have my privacy. Because I'm married doesn't mean that I can't have my private phone, I can't have my private number. I don't know how y'all see.
And that is causing a lot of problems today. Huh? I must say that.
You see this phone?
Right.
My phone and my husband's phone, they are both passworded, but we know each other's passwords. And we do, cause in case anything happens to either the two of us, or for some reason your phone is left behind, or you need to access somebody's phone, might have credit and the next person's may not have. You know, you don't want to be in a situation where you can't use the phone because you don't know what the password is. And we don't have anything to hide from each other, so our phones are open, they're left accessible. But there are many couples who don't live like that. There are many couples who their phone is hidden. Their phone, you know, is private,
to them,
totally private to the partner, private to themselves, and the partner can't get into it because there's something perhaps that they're hiding. So that introduces a whole different dynamic to the whole question of a type of cheating. You know, so we have the cyber issues being introduced. We have the emotional issues, which can be shown up through that, because you might be sending this person little, you know, people send you those nice wake up things on mornings, those little flowery things and things with hearts and stuff like that. But I would feel a little way if my husband is sending something like that to a woman the same woman every single morning. I would feel a way about something like that. You were going to say something just now.
I was going to say I don't even like to see those things come to me.
Right, I know you don't like them.
No, but what I was about to say was, going back from where you started, is there a possibility that the Will's wife was, because that's where you had started,
yes.
Will's wife was kind of at some point being lonely because Will was not around.
Well, we don't know.
I'm just saying, and which resulted in her befriending someone, the same thing that we were talking about, this friend thing.
I'm sorry, I might be old fashioned, right? I'm not perfect, but I have a problem. I have a problem
With?
If I am in my 40s, right now I'm in my 50s, but I have a problem if I'm in my 40s and my child is in their early 20s, and my child's friend who is in their early 20s becomes my friend. Because we have, as parents, we've always entertained our children's friends here at the house. So our children's friends have come over, they played dominoes, we fed them, we've laughed, we played games together, drop them home. Then when, you know, older guys then that were driving their cars, etc., etc. We've done it, you know.
Yeah.
But at no point in time could I imagine one of those young people who's the same age as my child becoming my friend. You know, that child would always be seen by me as a child because I see my child as a child. You know, you have a man child, but it's still your child even though he's a man, right? So he's your man child. So I mean, I would still see him as a man child. I couldn't imagine having that type of relationship because she said it began as a friendship. She was trying to help him.
How old was?
I think 23 or something like that.
Oh.
Right? I'm not going to go down the road of, you know, discussing that. But that's just my take on that section, that little section there, right? Because you brought her up, right? But so she said she had this friendship with him, and then it became inappropriate.
I was just showing how dangerous.
But that can happen no matter how old the person is.
That's what I'm saying. Friendships could be very dangerous if you do not have boundaries,
yes.
Where you say, listen, this is as far as it goes and no further, right? But sometimes we have found that persons fall prey because they allow those barriers or those boundaries to ease a bit,
yes,
which has resulted in they given more than they should and becomes prey to the person that they were in contact with.
That's right.
And
what you're saying is very true.
And we have to be very careful.
You have to be very cautious about things like that because it can then become a question of divided loyalty.
Yeah.
Because if you let someone into that space, that should really only be occupied by your spouse. You let them into that space, and you begin sharing intimate details of your life with them, or they're sharing. And the thing about it is, look, you know, I'm a professional counselor, so I understand the whole question of boundaries, and I understand even within a counseling relationship how that needs to be managed carefully, because you might have a client of the opposite sex who becomes attracted to you for whatever reason. It may not always be a sexual attraction, but it can even be an emotional attraction, because if your client lacked a mother figure, or your client lacked a big sister figure, you can become that person to your client. And your client can begin to see you in a different light. So even though you're expected to retain a professional counselor-counselee relationship, your client may begin to see you differently because you are meeting a need. You know, there is something that is often said about why some individuals, particularly women, because we love conversation so much and we love to know that someone is listening to us, why women sometimes become so attracted to their pastors or to their clergy is because the man listens to them. They finally find a man, even though he's their pastor, they find a man who is listening to them in a way that their husbands do not, right? And that can become a door where they step into an inappropriate space in their minds. It may not be that the man is interested in them or doing anything to them or trying to do anything to them, but in their minds they begin to attach to him inappropriately because he's meeting an emotional need that they haven't had met. And if he is not wise to it, if he doesn't understand and he doesn't have his eyes opened he himself, as Gabriel is saying, can open the door to that inappropriate relationship just blossoming into something that it shouldn't be, right? So I'm just saying all that to say that managing relationships, even in a professional context, when you are a trained counselor and you understand that you need to create boundaries, can be tenuous. It can be iffy, you know, because counselors can be vulnerable too. You know, they say every counselor should have a counselor. You should have someone that you debrief with, that you unpack with, so that you are always held accountable, right? And even if that person is not a counselor per se, there should be someone that you can talk to if you begin to feel uncomfortable with a counseling scenario. There should be someone that you can raise that with. Now, within the context of a relationship where you're not a professional counselor and you might just be a friend with a listening ear, you know, you may not even have the skills to understand what is happening. And even if you do, then understanding how to respond is even going to be more critical in terms of erecting boundaries and ensuring that people don't overstep the boundaries. So you might be a very warm person, you might be the type of person who loves people. You love to help people. There's nothing sinister in your desire to help people. You are not a predator. You are not a pervert. None of that. You are just a genuinely warm person who likes to help people. And you might have tried to help somebody at work. You might have been a lady, or you might be a lady and you've tried to help this young gentleman at work or this guy at work that needed help.
Yeah.
You might have seen somebody depressed. You might have reached out to them to try to cheer them up. It could all be all well and innocent. But at the same time, if you're married, even if you think your relationship is strong, because you think about attraction and chemistry, I always say this to people: because you love your partner does not mean you cannot feel chemistry with somebody else.
That's right.
Okay?
That's right.
Because you love your spouse, it does not mean you cannot see someone else and think that they're very attractive and even feel attracted to them. And because you feel attracted to someone, it does not mean that you don't love your partner.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it in itself, because it is just a human response, as it were. It is what you do with it.
Yeah.
It is what you do with it, how you manage it. If you sit and you dwell and you think on it and you start daydreaming about this person and you imagine all kinds of scenarios with this person, you fantasizing about them, then you're stepping in very tenuous ground, right? And you're exposing your marriage to an area that you don't want to go. You are making space for that very vulnerable response to a human happening, a human need. A very, sometimes it can just be a biological response, right? So these things happen, but it is how you